Greetings and welcome, friends! I'm Ash, and today I would like to talk to you about a game that has utterly consumed my last 2 weeks, and that game is Helldivers 2. Inspired by Starship Troopers, Helldivers 2 is a highly satirical shooter that has you spread peace, liberty, and manage democracy across the stars through the use of overwhelming firepower. And much like Starship Troopers, despite obviously being cannon fodder with the life expectancy measured in minutes, Helldivers 2 does a phenomenal job of making you feel like an unstoppable badass. All the way until you accidentally call down an orbital bombardment directly on your head and send yourself flying into the stratosphere Team Rocket style. So if you're curious about where exactly Helldivers 2 excels, as well as where it misses the mark and falls flat on its face, allow me to share with you my thoughts after spending well over 70 hours playing it since launch. And just a little spoiler alert here, it's pretty damn good. As someone that frequently plays old-school RPGs, where you can barely tell if you're looking at the top of someone's head or a random bit of shrubbery, I genuinely don't care about a game's visuals. If things look nice, that's great, but if they don't, that's also perfectly fine as long as the actual gameplay is solid. As such, I am both shocked and delighted to say that it was Helldivers 2's presentation that ended up getting me sucked in. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a desperate battle against bugs in a damp and humid jungle, or the pre-game lobbies set aboard your starship, everything about Helldivers 2 just looks and sounds great. Bugs charging at you through the thick smoke left behind orbital bombardment, you and your team desperately waiting for extraction while turrets fire relentlessly into the darkness, the red eyes of the automatons glaring at you through the blinding sandstorm of a crimson world. All of these are very simple gameplay moments that are elevated into something highly memorable thanks to the excellent audio-visual design. Perhaps the biggest piece of praise I can give Helldivers 2 here is to say that even the loading screen is amazing. And yes, I am actually talking about the loading screen. I have the attention span of a squirrel that's been on a steady diet of chips and cheap energy drinks. Yet despite that, I don't think I've ever alt-tabbed or walked away from my PC while Helldivers 2 was loading. The way the music swells as your drop pods are launched, and the way the air screams past you as you break through the atmosphere is just perfect. So while there are games out there that can stomp Helldivers 2 when it comes to raw graphical fidelity, there are very, very few that can beat it when it comes to style and atmosphere. And rather than babble on, allow me to show you. And just remember, this is a loading screen.
Power pod launch initiated.
As for the actual gameplay, Helldivers 2 is less of a conventional shooter and more of a USA Army simulator where you deal with your problems by airmailing absurd amounts of ordnance directly to their face through the use of stratagems. Besides delivering freedom from above, Helldivers 2's stratagems also give you access to things like sentries, minefields, high-powered weaponry with limited ammo, shields, and even a jetpack. Naturally, you can't simply summon the Rocket Fairy to blast away your enemies whenever you feel like it. Not only do all of your stratagems have a cooldown, but they also require a bit of time in order to trigger, are just as capable of destroying you and your allies as they are enemies, and they generally require a semi-complex chain of key presses in order to launch. That latter part is one of those things that sound like it would be annoying, but actually it works perfectly in the context of Helldivers 2. The process of inputting these codes can be fairly easy while you're just frolicking through a field, but trying to do the same while dodging 15 murder bots is another thing entirely. And so, despite ultimately being very simple, these stratagem codes add a surprising amount of tension to the gameplay, as well as the occasional moments of hilarity as you watch your friends fumble the reinforcement code over and over and over again. Since you can only have 4 unique stratagems in your loadout, and since most of them are highly specialized, you'll need to rely on your fellow players in order to cover your weaknesses. The same goes for your weapons, as they're all very clearly designed around specific engagement ranges and enemy types. Regardless of what you choose, pretty much all of the weapons feel great to use, especially some of the punchier ones like the recoilless rifle or the autocannon, as their sound design really sells their devastating potential. The weapons also have a decent bit of complexity to them. The reason this is the case is because you have different stages of accuracy depending on your speed and position. Everything from the "I hope I'm going to hit the correct planet" style of aiming while running to the "this might as well be a laser" accuracy while laying prone. Combine this with most weapons having some sort of trick you need to master, as well as enemies that all have different flavors of weak spots that allow you to literally tear them into pieces, and you end up with some highly satisfying gunplay. Unfortunately, while there are all sorts of weapons covering all sorts of playstyles, many of them are a bit of a trap as the weapon and stratagem balance is currently very messy. Weapons like the breaker shotgun or the armor-piercing railgun feel incredible to use and also pack one hell of a punch. On the other hand, there are weapons like the scythe laser rifle or the flamethrower which honestly just feel pathetic in almost every respect. The scythe in particular used to be one of my favorite weapons in Helldivers 1, but in the sequel it does basically no damage and overheats way too quickly. And so, despite being a cool looking laser rifle, I have basically never seen anyone but me use it in a mission. As a consequence of this, once you start exploring the higher difficulties, you're going to see people mostly using the same types of weaponry over and over again. Even if you don't follow discussions online and just experiment with the weapons yourself, chances are good you'll end up with a very similar loadout, as it is just that obvious which weapons and stratagems are good and which ones are only good for getting yourself killed. Balancing all of this shouldn't be too difficult, as it is just a matter of tuning some numbers. So with a bit of luck, we'll get a patch in the near future that should sort all of this out. I certainly hope so anyway, because Helldivers 2 has way too many fun weapons and stratagems to be in a situation where only a couple are actually good. Each mission in Helldivers 2 takes place on a procedurally generated map that's themed after whatever world you're currently on. So if the planet you're delivering freedom to is covered in thick forests and endless fog, that is exactly what you're going to get once you actually land there. Naturally, not every planet is equally hospitable to human life, so the difficulty will go up and down depending on where you are. But it does add a nice bit of variety and excitement to the missions. The same goes for the weather effects, as the map suddenly getting covered by an impenetrable mist or a violent sandstorm is definitely an experience to remember. Depending on which planet you choose to explode onto, you'll be faced off against the robotic automatons or the Terminid swarm. The former feel like a combination of Terminators from the first movie mixed in with some Warhammer 40k units, while the latter are basically spruced up versions of the bugs from Helldivers 2's main inspiration, Starship Troopers. Both are well designed, and most importantly, they both feel satisfying to fight. Personally, I would attribute this to the localized damage system that allows you to literally tear them into tiny little pieces when using high-powered weaponry. As you would expect, fighting each of the two factions also feels completely different. The bugs are fast, aggressive, attack in large numbers, and generally try to bring you down in close quarters combat. On the other hand, the bots are slow as molasses, but they compensate for that by being armored and durable, as well as preferring ranged weapons and defensive emplacements that can really mess with your equipment and cooldowns. While you can get through missions with a generic loadout, it is always a good idea to tailor your build to the faction you're fighting against. Bots have clearly defined weak points, so precision, long-range weapons can do a lot of work. While those same weapons against the bugs can often be a liability because sniping one bug doesn't exactly stop the other 20 from taking the nibble out of you. Similarly, wide, sweeping attacks and stratagems are insanely powerful against the bugs, but lose a lot of their effectiveness against the mostly spread out automatons. The problem here is that both factions field immense amounts of heavily armored enemies on the higher difficulties, all of which require very specific answers since most weapons cannot actually break that armor. Combine this with the aforementioned balance problems and you've got a situation where the game heavily encourages you to vary your builds, while the overwhelming presence of these elite enemies essentially forces you to run the same efficient and anti-armor loadout regardless of what you're doing, since that is the only real way you have to guarantee that your team will have what they need to beat the mission. Speaking of which, the actual objectives you have to do in each mission are all incredibly simple. Everything from turning on artillery outposts to saving civilians or even launching a literal nuclear bomb is done by pressing a few buttons, and, if the game is feeling really frisky, maybe even turning a couple of valves. The reason this is the case is because Helldivers 2 is less concerned about the what and the why and more about the how. Because once again, pushing in a couple of buttons is super easy when you're nice and relaxed, but when you're in the middle of a Terminator apocalypse and the ground is literally shaking from the orbital bombardment, trying to solve a puzzle meant for literal babies while getting shot in the back does get noticeably trickier. It is exactly these moments that make me so eager to dive back into Helldivers 2. Not the whole getting shot at thing, mind you, but rather the sheer chaos that can erupt at any moment. All it takes is a single player accidentally triggering a patrol and not clearing them out before they raise an alarm, in order to transform a stealth operation into a fight for sheer survival. In 30 seconds flat, a happy field full of flowers can transform into a dust-ridden war zone, with explosions and screams going off in every direction. And you know what? I absolutely love that. Surviving these situations requires both personal skill and cooperation with your team, which is exactly where Helldivers 2's gameplay shines. It is very easy to make a mistake when panicked and find yourself repainting a nearby hillside with your face. But it is also possible to make a couple of really smart maneuvers that help stem the tide and save the day. The same goes for your team, as you'll frequently find yourself in near-death scenarios, only for them to suddenly get resolved by a precision bombing run from a teammate that noticed you're in trouble, or by you suddenly exploding because your good Samaritan misjudged their throw. In a way, these battles frequently feel like an actual war, where you're just a tiny cog in the machine desperately ducking and diving from Terminators while simultaneously trying to survive the sky raining fire. It really makes you feel like you're completely out of your element, especially given how easily you can die, which then only makes each success feel all the more memorable as you really had to work for it. And that's basically it. It is a very simple gameplay loop that consists of exploring, fighting, doing objectives, and then running away in sheer terror from the seemingly endless hordes of giant bugs. I don't mean that in a negative way either, as the relative simplicity of missions really lets you focus on what truly matters. Causing chaos, getting into fights, and sharing a laugh whenever you or your teammates get punted by a charger like some sort of misshapen golf ball. Much like a lot of games out there, Helldivers 2 launched alongside not only a cash shop, but a battle pass system as well. While this has caused me a great deal of concern at the very start, I am pleased to report that both have been implemented in a very customer-friendly way. The cash shop uses super credits, which can be found in just about every single mission, or if you so wish, purchased with real money. Which means that everyone, even those that don't pay extra, are able to access the fanciest armor sets with a little bit of effort. In fact, there is no carrot to endlessly chase and nothing to really stress about. All Helldivers 2 asks of you is to simply play the game in order to get your hands on new toys and cosmetics, and honestly, that's exactly how it should be. There is, unfortunately, one problem here, and that will be the acquisition rate of medals, which you need to unlock new items and weapons in both the paid and free battle passes. As it stands, a fully completed mission on the hardest difficulty will give you between 8 and 14 medals and take anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes, while progressing through some of the later tiers of the battle pass requires hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of medals. As a consequence of this, unlocking new items can be a very, very slow process even if you're a highly skilled and highly active player. That said, you can speed this up by farming the same 5-minute defense mission over and over again until you start hearing mortar turrets in your dreams. But to be perfectly honest, that is hardly a fun way to play the game, or really something the Helldivers 2 should encourage. So considering how well they've done the monetization of premium items, I can only hope that Helldivers 2 will manage to find a way to make the overall grind a bit easier. Especially for the casual players, as having more weapons to experiment with is definitely a positive thing, both for the players themselves and for the developers. This should come as little surprise, but Helldivers 2 is phenomenal. It feels satisfying to play, it looks and sounds great, and its ability to generate ridiculous moments in almost every single match makes it a very memorable experience. As an added bonus, it's also one of the least greedy live service games I've played in a while. So while it does have some major balance issues that need to be resolved sooner rather than later, I think I can comfortably recommend Helldivers 2 to anyone that enjoys co-op shooters and doesn't mind the occasionally brutal difficulty. Now if you'll excuse me, I do believe there are some bugs out there that need to be delivered a healthy dose of freedom. Thank you guys for watching, and if you enjoyed this, or even if you didn't, please do let me know. If you'd like to see more, make sure to subscribe, hit the stupid bell, pet your mech, and do whatever other nonsense you gotta do these days. Thank you again for watching, and I do hope to see you soon. Bye bye!